Hello and welcome to the Actual Tech Media Expert Series. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this special event on the cloud-powered enterprise, achieving a successful cloud transformation. Now, before we get to today's great session, we do have a few housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of it. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in our webinar control panel. So not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that come in. That Q&A panel is also the place to just say hello, which a lot of you have been doing already. We love to hear where you're logging in from. And it's also the place to let us know if we can help in the unlikely event you have any technical issues. A browser refresh will fix most technical problems, but if that doesn't work, just let us know there in the Q&A, and we'll provide further technical assistance. Now, at the end of this webinar event, we will be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. The official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. Now, these Expert Series events are special product-neutral looks at pressing technology problems presented by an expert in the field. But the support of our sponsors makes it possible for us to bring you this content, so we want to give a special shout out to them now. So over the next few slides, I'm going to share some messages from our sponsor today, and they'll refer to links that you can find in the handout section of your console at any time during the presentation. So now, before we get to the main presentation, a few words from our sponsor, Nasuni. Nasuni is a leading hybrid cloud storage solution that powers business growth with effortless scalability, built-in security, and fast edge performance using a unique cloud-native architecture. The Nasuni file data platform delivers operational excellence by consolidating NAS and backup, eliminating data silos, and making management easy and flexible without changes to apps or workflows. So you can learn more about Nasuni at nasuni.com, and that link is also in your handout section. So take advantage of that handout section at any time during the presentation, and you can click on that there. All right. So with our housekeeping out of the way, let's get to today's excellent content. I am delighted to welcome back the David Davis. David is a co-founder of Actual Tech Media and is the former events czar here. A lot of you who have attended our events for a while will remember David well. And a lot of our success with events was due to David being such a widely known and highly respected technology expert and evangelist. And speaking of that evangelism, you may have seen some of the dozens of Pluralsight courses that David's created, many of which are on cloud or on the virtualization technologies that underpin cloud. So that all makes David the perfect person to talk to us about achieving a successful cloud transformation. So I'm going to turn things over to David to take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining the webinar today. Thank you, Scott, for the introduction. It's great to be back on an Actual Tech Media event. I love talking about the cloud-powered enterprise and how it can achieve successful cloud migration or transformation at your company. So I've created a lot of content over the years around cloud, courses like Cloud Computing Fundamentals and Cloud Transformation. And so this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and I think can help a lot of companies out there. So let's first start by envisioning ourselves on a transformational journey to the cloud. You know, you're there, you're looking up into the clouds, if you will, the proverbial clouds, and you're thinking about your company and your applications, and even more critically, your data. Do you really want to take that up into the public cloud or a private cloud or some or other form of cloud offering? And I think that's a very important question just to start with. Is this something you really want to do? Why is this important to you? Why are you considering this? Because, you know, it's a critical jump for you and for your company. Of course, what we envision with the cloud is kind of this step into the future. You know, how can the cloud bring the future that we envision to our company, to our clients, to our customers? How can cloud transform, technology of all shapes and sizes at our company? So it could be, your accounts payable system, your HR system, your financial system, could be your website or point of sale system or e-commerce system, whatever it is that your company does, however it is that your company leverages technology. And more we're thinking about AI, artificial intelligence. How can AI help transform the customer experience at our company and allow us to better leverage our data and do things that our competitors, haven't dreamed of yet to make our company more competitive, more agile, more scalable. And, in the end, for most companies, that leads to being more and more profitable. So that brings us to the question of why. Why are we interested in cloud transformation? And I think the answer to that question is going to be different for every one of us out there, because every company is different, every person is different. Why are we talking about this? Well, let's start off with why this can be a game changer for you and your enterprise. What is cloud transformation? Let's just start with the definition before we answer the question of why. And that's a hard question to answer, cloud transformation, because if you look it up, you'll find many different definitions of cloud transformation. The best one that I've seen out there is that cloud transformation is the process of transitioning a business's data, applications, and software to the cloud. However, that might sound really simple, but it's really not, because transformation in itself is very different from adoption or migration. And so migration and adoption, like migration is just moving your data. That's pretty straightforward. Adoption is kind of the next step up from that, which is not just moving your data, but really leveraging cloud services of some shape or form. And then even the higher step up from that is this idea of transformation, because transformation involves, looking at every process, all of your data, all your applications, and how you can more efficiently use everything, really. Sort of an efficiency exercise across everything that your company does with technology. And that's, a whole big marshmallow to try to bite off, as the saying goes. You can't just check the box and say, yep, we transformed. It could take, depending on the size of your organization, hundreds of people to do this analysis, consultants, for very large enterprises. And it could be a process that never really completes, this sort of transformation to the cloud, because it's all about, operational efficiency, cost savings, agility, scalability, and improving security and leveraging, really the power of the cloud. Picture that, migration, adoption, and then transformation. And so now we kind of know what it is. Let's think about all the benefits of the cloud. And I just kind of ruined that surprise because I just went through them all there. Agility, scalability, efficiency, cost savings, potentially, or it could cost more depending how you do it. There's a whole lot of benefits of the cloud. And so that's why we're looking to the cloud. And now we have all this, AI excitement, which is honestly very incredible, very exciting. But it also gives us even more to think about when it comes to cloud transformation. But keep in mind, it's got to be done right. You could really mess things up. I've seen a lot of statistics out there about failed cloud transformations, and you don't want to be in that bucket. Companies who spent years and millions of dollars potentially and just decided that that cloud transformation was a big fat failure, and you don't want your name associated with that. That could be a resume generating event. So make sure that you've done right. You do this right, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But let's move on to the next question, from why to what. What exactly is the cloud transformation? We defined it a little bit there because I wanted to do that before we answered the question of why. But to dig into it a little bit deeper, we need to think about the many different forms of cloud. There's infrastructure as a service, software as a service, platform as a service, storage as a service, all these different forms of cloud transformation to be considered. And you're going to have to pick the right one for you and for your company. It could be different for all your different forms of applications. Maybe for, let's say, a financial system or an HR system, you choose software as a service. But for your custom e-commerce application, you might choose a platform as a service. So it doesn't have to be a one size fits all. There's many different forms of cloud. And then there's many different ways to accomplish, the cloud transformation, especially across all the different forms of cloud. We also have, many different pieces to the cloud puzzle. Things like, where are your customers? Where is your data? What type of applications do you have? And you also want to consider cloud native technologies, things like Kubernetes, containers, serverless, microservices architectures. These can really give you and your company and your applications tremendous scalability and efficiently, but they also, could come with a learning curve. And that may be why you want to consider cloud native offerings from, AWS, Google, and Azure. Things like Kubernetes as a service, if you will. They all have their own flavor of it and name for it, but essentially leveraging these cloud native technologies, but doing it with an as a service model so that you don't have to essentially do it yourself or build it yourself. And then, of course, along the way, you also want to consider smart technology solutions to make it far easier, such as those from our friends at Nasuni, who is sponsoring, this event. And we'll be talking more about data. And we'll be talking more about data here in just a moment, which is kind of the big challenge, or one of the big challenges that Nasuni helps to solve. And that brings us to how. How exactly are you going to build this super cloud computing machine that's going to be the silver bullet and solve all your problems? Well, first off, I encourage you to learn about real world cloud transformation. And, there's a lot of documented steps out there. Amazon has the AWS Cloud Adoption Framework. Google has their own. Azure has their own. Consultants have their own adoption frameworks. And you can use these frameworks yourself. You don't have to, leverage those specific cloud services. Although it could be helpful because a lot of the frameworks match up with specific cloud offerings. But you can leverage those frameworks to help you to move through the transformation. So they always start off with assessment. Where are you now? And where do you want to go in the future? And then that can help you to choose the right cloud model. We talked about that: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. Of course, consider third-party tools and solutions along the way. What do the cloud providers have, like we said, as a service offerings to make those transformations even easier for you? And then, what third-party tools are out there to help you make those transformations easier? Because I'll tell you, nobody just uses AWS. Nobody just uses Google Cloud or Azure. Enterprises always use third-party tools on top of those cloud offerings. It's just like in the data center. Nobody just runs Windows, right? You have monitoring tools, you have third-party backup tools, you have third-party storage solutions, and the cloud is no different. So consider third-party tools. It's a very important piece of the cloud transformation puzzle. Of course, you want to test and then test some more and then test some more to make sure that this cloud transformation is going to be a success. You'll want to execute it in phases. You're not going to just move everything at once. You're going to select a small application, maybe that has low priority, something you can test and learn with. And if something fails, you're not going to have an egg on your face, as the saying goes. And then once you execute, you're going to do post-migration optimization, things around security and efficiency. And of course, it's never done. You're always going to be tweaking. But once you feel comfortable, then you can go back to the next phase and migrate or transform the next application. So don't look at it as a single transformation for the entire business all at once, because if you look at it in that way, odds are you're never going to be able to, bite off that big of a marshmallow all at once. And then that brings us to some challenges that you really need to consider along the way. Things like security, that has bitten more than one company out there, and there's a ton of great third-party tools to help you ensure that your data is secure. Compliance, the cost, that is a huge factor. A lot of companies say they want to move to cloud to save money, but in the end, they don't always save money. Sometimes they spend more. So you really need to analyze the cost and make sure that once you migrate to the cloud, if cost is one of your goals, that you're going to really achieve that goal. And then a huge hurdle for a lot of companies, and where a lot of companies have tried to transform and failed, it has been around skills, just not having the skills that they need, because the cloud is so different from running the same applications and storing the same data on premises. It's a completely different paradigm, if you will. And so you need the skills to properly transform your organization to the cloud. And make sure that you stress that with your upper management. If they tell you, hey, I want you to be responsible for transforming, migrating, adopting everything into the cloud, say, hey, wait, we've got a staff here and our staff needs skills before we can move into that. So make sure you get the proper training and certification and some real world practice around cloud before you start working with your company's real applications and data. And speaking of data, I want to take a second here and just talk about data. We've got some really cool pictures of data from AI here. And, the first thing I want to point out is when it comes to data, data oftentimes is one of the biggest challenges. A lot of companies have a whole lot of data, and that data is growing just massively. In some cases, it's out of control. They don't even know how much data they have. They can't keep pace with the amount of data that's being created at their company every single day. So you really need to get a handle on your company's data. How much do you have? What kind of performance are you getting? Is it secure? Is it, compliant with your company's requirements? Who has access to that data? What is that data being used for? Before you even consider migrating, that data up into the cloud. And every company out there, honestly, when you're looking at your giant ball of data, you're going to have different requirements. Every company is going to have different requirements. Every sector, every industry is going to have different types of data and different data requirements and needs. And so, keep that in mind and look for companies out there, third-party companies that can help you to make that data migration to the cloud easier. Specifically, look for companies who have worked with companies in your industry or your vertical, because you want to get some case studies from them and find out, hey, how have you helped other companies just like ours? What have you done with companies who have, let's say, critical health data or personally identifiable information, perhaps financial data, like maybe your company has? How have you helped them to properly migrate that to the cloud and keep in compliance and keep it secure, ensure availability, perhaps to the edge? Maybe you have edge locations. Or how have you helped companies to leverage AI around that data to, ensure that it's highly performant and efficient and highly available? So look for those kind of case studies and ask for examples from companies. Maybe talk to real customers out there of those solutions and find out how have they helped other companies. And maybe you can talk to them in person at user groups or through analyst firms. Maybe there's some experienced consultants in your area that can help you deal with data challenges, especially as you consider migrating or transforming to the cloud. Talk to peers in your industry, user groups, expos, conferences, great places to meet, other peers in your industry if you don't already know them. And then I feel like I'm rushing a little bit, but I want to recap. I want to save some time here for questions as well. So to sum it up, over plan. If you think you've planned enough, then stop and then plan some more. Also, over test. If you think you've tested enough, well, think about it some more and do some more testing. Those are my two most critical pieces of advice right there. You want to carefully consider all your options, especially related to cost. Don't just believe the first Wall Street Journal article that the CEO brings into your office and says, "Hey, we need to transform to the cloud. We're going to save a bunch of money." That might be true in some cases, but on the other hand, every company is different, every cloud offering is different, every application is different. So one size does not fit all. So carefully consider all your options. Of course, implement in phases. It's not something you have to do all at once. And then continuously optimize, continually secure, constant, never-ending improvement. It's not something that you're going to be just done with. And then, of course, be willing to embrace change. And if you don't work at an organization where change is embraced, then maybe you don't want to move to the cloud, or maybe you're going to have to spend a whole lot of time educating your technology group and your executives and your end users on the value of the cloud and how cloud can help us with business agility and to make us more competitive. But it's also going to require change. Some things might change, but that's okay, if it's change for the better. So I hope that that advice there has been valuable. Never stop learning. Keep learning about the new enhancements and improvements around cloud. Always stay curious about emerging technologies. And I encourage you to actively talk and participate with other peers in your industry. And if you have questions for me, of course, I'm here for some Q&A for a little while, but always reach out to me on Twitter. Follow me on LinkedIn as well. I'm always talking about cloud and cloud transformation, AI and new technologies. And it's been a privilege to speak here on the event today. Thanks very much.
All right. Well, David, great presentation. There was so much there that I'd like to dig into, even before we get into all the questions that are coming in from the audience. First off, you really provided some nice definitions and differentiators among cloud migration, cloud adoption, and cloud transformation. Can you give us some examples about the difference between those three?
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. Great question. I mean, if we think about migration first, migration could be as simple as what they call lift and shift, which is kind of fun to say, but that's really just simply moving your virtual machine, for example, up into the cloud. And well, that's one way to say, yep, we checked the box, we migrated to cloud. That VM is now in the cloud. You should really put a lot more effort, in my opinion, into a cloud migration by taking it to a higher level than simply just migrating to the cloud, because you're really only going to see the value of the cloud model when you leverage all the features of the cloud. And simply running a VM in the cloud isn't, I mean, you gain some benefit, of course, but not a huge benefit, because you didn't really change what you were doing. You just moved it from one place to the other place. So I would encourage folks, to compare cloud adoption and cloud transformation and try to see the value in that, because the cloud providers have done a great job of documenting, really detailing their different cloud adoption frameworks, and they offer a tremendous value. So even if you are going to keep your data, let's say on premises, you can learn a whole lot from these different adoption frameworks simply in building solid technical applications, for your company in terms of efficiency and security and scalability and availability. And some examples, let's see, I wrote down like the AWS Cloud Adoption Framework is really good. Google, they call theirs a digital transformation framework. Microsoft calls it the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure. And so they're all really excellent resources, even if you don't adopt those specific clouds.
Mm, excellent. All right. Well, thanks for pointing out those resources. Um, so you mentioned in your presentation how important skills are for a successful cloud transformation. What are some of the key skills that are emerging as cloud evolves that are becoming critical?
Yeah, great question. I mean, one is simply just understanding, I think, the cloud model at the most basic level. And I mean, if you don't have experience in that area and you're just kind of getting started in cloud, um, all the different cloud providers have certifications, which in many cases are free, or it might be like $100 or something, to take the test. For example, AWS has the cloud practitioner certification. Microsoft has certified Azure fundamentals. Google has the cloud digital leader, and quite a few of those are free. Last time I checked, and they do a great job of sort of teaching you the fundamentals of everything around the cloud model, the benefits, and what you're kind of getting into. And then from there, I mean, if you want to choose a specific cloud that you feel most passionate about or interested about, um, of course there's more advanced certifications that even if you don't pursue that certification, and let's say go take the test, just going through the blueprint of all the different things that you should know, um, and what you'll find in there are things like containers, of course, Kubernetes, serverless architectures, and just using as a service type offerings. So storage as a service like S3 could be one example of an as a service offering.
Okay. All right. Great. In sort of along those lines, what do you see now as the key certifications that really demonstrate mastery of the cloud skills that are important now? Are they mostly coming out of the major cloud providers themselves, or there other ones that are out there?
There are some other independent cloud certifications out there. Um, in my experience, they just haven't gained a lot of popularity. I know like CompTIA has a cloud certification, but honestly, I can't even remember the name of it. That's how little I hear about it. I'm afraid. But AWS, I think, kind of is the big gorilla in the room with their cloud certifications. But it depends also sort of what niche you fall into, or what kind of following your company has. For example, the Microsoft Azure certifications are also very important for companies that are more Microsoft focused. I see, and then Google really kind of seems to be the cutting edge kind of niche for folks who are um, really cutting edge in cloud native stuff. So, but they're all good.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Um, so we've got another expert series coming up later this month on the topic of cloud repatriation, which is becoming more important. And so while this one is about cloud transformation, I'm wondering if you feel like right sizing your cloud has a role in cloud transformation. Like taking a hard look at what you've got in the cloud and whether some of that should be somewhere else, like in a hybrid cloud situation where you're repatriating some of your data into a private cloud or on premises, and only sort of putting strategic applications and data in the cloud.
Yeah, I think it's always smart to run your IT organization as kind of a never-ending transformation where, cloud is not a silver bullet, it's not a destination. You try to think of cloud more as a mindset or a paradigm where, you're using the cloud model to constantly improve your company's efficiency and technology and processes to be more competitive and as efficient as possible in the IT organization. And so I try not to think of a public cloud as like the the silver bullet that's going to make that happen. While it can, by kind of forcing your IT apps and data into it, I think it's smarter just to think of the cloud model and then use those features and benefits that you want to kind of guide you into the best solution for your company. And the best solution for your company could be a co-location center. It could be your on-premises data center, or it could be a SaaS application, or it could be any one of the public cloud providers. And so don't get caught into just like, oh, we got to put our data into AWS. That's going to fix everything.
Mhm.
No, that's not really what it's about. It's about using that cloud operating model and the mindset to make the best decision for where to run your applications and where to store your data.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that description you just gave of that never ending transformation. That's such a smart way to think about just the IT department's job. It's a really nice phrase. Um, so you've been using cloud, earning cloud certifications, and creating cloud related coursework for a long time. Given that historical perspective, what's your view of what a cutting edge cloud looks like now? What are some of the technologies in sort of the ultimate cloud of 2024? To reference your presentation where you showed that big monstrous looking cloud robot, what are the latest components of that super cloud computing machine?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. All three of the major cloud providers to me are very similarly matched these days. I saw in the news yesterday that those big major cloud providers, plus like Facebook and OpenAI, each each one of them are spending almost $50 billion a year on research related to AI. So I can only imagine, what things are going to be like in the future with that much investment in AI and how things are going to, change dramatically. But I don't think there's any kind of one size fits all, like perfect ultimate solution, because of course, the safe political answer, the consultant answer is every company is different, and inside every company, every application and every data set is different. So, you really need to learn about your applications and your data, and learn about the major cloud providers, and then how those cloud providers can meet the needs of your unique application and data set. But of course, on the other hand, if you're starting, or designing a new application, while I'm not an application developer myself, I would certainly, look at cloud native architectures and move towards those serverless containers, Kubernetes, and more the cloud native services that are being offered by the cloud providers are making all of that just easier and easier. Like Azure Kubernetes Service, or AKS, and then Amazon has EKS, Elastic Compute, or Elastic Kubernetes Service. And so, what in the past, required much more in-depth knowledge of Kubernetes, now can be very easily, done with these kind of like Kubernetes as a service offerings. So I would, lean towards something like that.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Great answer. Okay, well let's get into some of these questions that are coming in from the audience, and we've got plenty of time here. So if you've got questions, please type them in. But let's see. For the first one, this one is kind of related to one of the questions that we talked about. It's a great follow up. So this is from Joseph, who's wondering: are there frameworks for business to decide which applications and business flows to migrate to cloud and which ones to keep on premise?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that comes back to kind of what we talked about, where, don't think about, well, should I migrate it to cloud? Think about it instead of that. Think about it as what's the best way to architect this application and the best way to store this data, and what technology should we use, like a container, Kubernetes, um, should it should it be run as a service with the application provider? Maybe that's the easiest way to do it, or best way to do it. um, and then secondarily, like once you find the best way to run this application and store your data, then you can start looking at where, like, should we store it in the cloud? Should we store it on premises in some sort of hosted co-location facility? And I know here at Actual Tech Media, we've had a lot of sponsors come on from companies that are massive private cloud, providers. So you don't have to just limit it to AWS and Google and Azure, but eventually you'll get into that decision. But I encourage you to not start with that question or that decision.
Okay. All right. Excellent. And Joseph, thanks for the question. Another one here it comes from Steve, who's wondering, one issue during data migration and transformation is to ensure data remains intact and uncorrupted during the transfer process. And Steve says he knows at least a couple of firms having trouble due to data loss or corruption, since they don't run systems in parallel for a while before moving totally to the cloud, or don't run sync checks after data migration. And he's wondering, is there any cost-effective way for those firms to mitigate such risks while keeping the cost down?
I don't know. That's not something I've had a lot of experience with, but I think that would be a great question for the experts over at Nasuni. Since they have a lot of solutions for data synchronization and transfer and everything like that. So yeah, I would probably route that over to them, but I think that's a great question.
Okay. Yep. We'll send that along to Nasuni. Thanks for the question, Steve. Let's see. We've got a question here from John, who's wondering about implementing AI fraud or data bridge checking on the cloud. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure what data bridge checking is. But any thoughts on that one, David?
Not a lot, but yeah, because I'm not quite sure what data bridge checking means either. But I am very interested in, and I'm sure there are AI security solutions out there that can first try to prevent that data from being lost to begin with. That would be the most important thing. But then also AI solutions that can kind of search the dark web, if you will, and find data that has been lost. But of course, once that happens, it's already too late. So you really want to stop it before it ever happens by having security implemented in layers. And just like with cloud, there's no single silver bullet security solution out there. Just like an onion, you want to have multiple layers of security. And I think more and more AI is becoming part of those layers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and this is what I'm marking down for myself, just to check out data bridge leaking. Interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks for the questions, John. And David, here's one that I think you might have answered this one in chat, but maybe we could just go through it too. It was a question about, there are many challenges to migrating to the cloud. One of them is security. Some firms think they can rely on protection from cloud service providers without realizing they'll be responsible for their own network security. And then is this question from Steve. It also goes on to talk about challenges with privacy and national laws that are sort of local there, and wondering what strategies could be provided to those firms in a more automated way, if any.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, Steve. Thank you for that. And let's see, where was it? Oh, I just lost the question.
Oh, it was number 34, if that helps in the list.
Yes. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So when it comes to locality of the data, which is just really where's the data stored, to me that should be easily resolved because most cloud providers, you can easily select when, let's say, this S3 bucket, which availability zone, let's say at Amazon Web Services, do I want this in? And for example, I can choose Northern Virginia or Ohio or California, and of course, many other data centers around the world. So if you want your data to be kept there, you're choosing the location for it when you choose to create that, let's say, S3 bucket. to store your data. And then the other question was around privacy. And in my opinion, I would look for cloud security or managed service providers that provide cloud security services, because you are right that so much of the cloud model is that, for example, data protection is left up to the client. It's left up to you. Security, in many cases, is left up to you as well. So you really need to not fall into that false sense of security, like, oh, I put it in the cloud, it's totally protected, it'll never go down. There's a story in the news this week about I don't remember the name of the company, but one of the largest companies in Australia had their data in Google Cloud one day just disappear. Um, and this is a massive company. Their data it was gone. And
Yeah.
it took a couple days for Google to realize that, oh, we accidentally deleted your account. Um, but like, what if that was permanent? I mean, that protecting that data, ultimately it falls back to you as the client. So you can't just put your data in the cloud and think, oh, it's protected, it's secured. You need to make sure you have offsite backups, and you need to make sure you have multiple layers of security as well, and perform security audits and do everything that you would do if it was on premises in your own data center. I mean, unless you outsource that to some sort of managed security provider, and there's multiple out there that can do that for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important to understand that shared security model, and it's different for every type of cloud. There's IaaS versus PaaS versus SaaS. And understanding the vendors' policies as far as how long they keep your data, or how long they keep any backups of your data. And everybody's a little bit different, so it's easy to have your data get lost in the wash if you're not extremely careful about it.
Absolutely, yeah. For example, the AWS shared responsibility model. If you're using AWS, you need to be familiar with that model. What it breaks down what you're responsible for and what AWS is responsible for. And I'll tell you, it's about 50-50.
Yeah,
And it depends a lot, of course, on the service that you select in AWS. And so that's even something more to keep in mind, because depending on the service you select, you might get, some more services or fewer services related to security and data protection.
yeah, yeah. Well, David, we got a question in here from Steve. It's kind of a philosophical question. I love it, and I'd love to hear your take on it. So, Steve's question is: migrating to a single cloud provider can make it difficult to switch vendors in the future, and even AWS went down a few times in the past. However, having more than one cloud provider will make integration more complex, and it definitely will cost more. What do you suggest? Yeah, what's a good framework for thinking about that in your view, David?
Yeah, that's a great question. Of course, that is a challenge, because you really can't do it all. I wish we could, kind of like James Bond or something. You just have a backup plan for a backup plan for a backup plan, and there's never any sort of failure. But in the real world, we end up having to choose, typically, a single cloud provider. You're not going to run your application across 3 different clouds. And you'll find out is, if for those out there who haven't seen this already before, but the cloud providers all work very differently, and it can get very complex very quickly. So just because you can use AWS doesn't mean you can use Azure, and because you can use Azure doesn't mean you can use Google. They all work very differently. The administrative interfaces, the features, the APIs, the billing, everything is different. So logistically, running the same application and storing the same data across 3 different clouds and like trying to keep it in sync, just is quite unrealistic, except for maybe the largest organizations out there in the world. So yeah, you're going to have to choose one cloud provider, and I would just make sure that you understand the shared responsibility model. You have your data protected offsite. Keep in mind that cloud can go down, and AWS has what they call the well architected framework. So you want to make sure that your application and data are designed and stored um, in concert with the AWS well architected framework. And of course, the more availability and security you built in using that framework, it might cause your bill, your monthly bill, to go up more and more, because you can choose to synchronize your data across multiple regions and availability zones and all around the world, and you can do all of that, but there is an associated price tag. And at some point, just like insurance, you have to decide how much insurance do I really want to purchase.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Well, David, that's probably a good place to leave it. We've had you in the hot seat here for quite a while. I'll tell you, it's been an actual, an absolute delight to have this opportunity to pick your brain about cloud. You just know so much about it, and it's really been a great session. Appreciate all your insights here. Thanks so much for coming on.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure chatting with you again, Scott. A pleasure seeing so many longtime Actual Tech Media attendees out there in the audience. You know who you are. It's great to see your name again. Great to be on an event with you. And I hope everyone has a great weekend, and stay safe. And thanks for tuning in to the Expert Series event. And thank you,
All right.
Scott.
Thanks, David. All right. And before we wrap up, we do have one more thing to do, and that is to do the Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of the $250 Amazon gift card today is Adrian Sherwood from Maryland. Congratulations to Adrian. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Nasuni for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for your great questions. That's going to conclude today's event. Like David said, have a great weekend, everybody.